Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is simple. Take important source material and pull out the key insights and, well, surprising facts for you.
And today, we're diving into a really fascinating text chapter 2 of the book of Ecclesiastes.
Right. This chapter is like reading someone's journal, someone with, frankly, unbelievable power and resources.
Exactly. It's their personal quest, using everything they had to figure out what actually makes life satisfying, what's truly good, when you just look at life under the sun.
Under the sun, meaning life just as we experience it here without necessarily looking beyond that.
That's the idea, life on its own terms. So they set out on this huge experiment.
An experiment in living, essentially, trying everything.
Pretty much, they decided to test life, to really find out what is good. Not good versus bad morally, but what has real, lasting value.
Okay, so where does someone with unlimited options even begin an experiment like that?
Well, the text tells us he started with pleasure, just pure enjoyment.
Makes sense, I guess. Go for the fun first.
Right. He specifically mentions testing laughter and pleasure,
Hmm.
like seeking out fun experiences, seeing if that's the answer.
And did he find meaning in just having a good time?
No, not really. The conclusion came pretty quickly, it seems. He found it meaningless.
Meaningless. Wow.
Yeah, he's quoted saying, "Laughter is foolish, and what does pleasure accomplish?" It sounds like the immediate buzz just didn't deliver anything deep or lasting.
That's a pretty stark finding right off the bat. But did he give up on pleasure entirely then? The text mentions trying to cheer myself with wine and embracing folly. Sounds like maybe he just leaned into the party harder.
It does sound a bit like that, but there's a really key qualifier. He adds, "My mind still guiding me with wisdom."
Ah, okay. So it wasn't just losing himself.
No, it seems more like a deliberate, almost scientific exploration of folly. He was engaging with it, with wine, but still observing, analyzing from a place of wisdom, trying to see if maybe that path, the less rational one, held the key.
A controlled dive into excess?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, trying to understand what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. But that didn't seem to yield the answer either.
So pleasure and even calculated folly, dead ends in terms of ultimate meaning. Where did he pivot next with all those resources?
The focus shifts dramatically. He starts undertaking great projects. We're talking massive, tangible achievements, building things on an epic scale.
Like the houses for myself mentioned, plural, suggesting more than just one palace.
Absolutely. Multiple grand estates, it seems.
Right.
And it went beyond just buildings. He got into huge agricultural and environmental projects, planting vineyards.
Vineyards, okay. Large-scale wine production, maybe.
Could be. And creating gardens and parks filled with all kinds of fruit trees. Not just functional, but beautiful, abundant spaces.
And that requires infrastructure, right? Like the reservoirs to water groves. That's serious engineering.
Exactly. Big infrastructure to support it all.
Yeah.
But his accumulation wasn't just land and buildings. It extended to people and wealth.
Right. Acquiring male and female slaves and having slaves born in my house, that points to a huge established household.
Generational wealth, a massive workforce. And his livestock holdings were apparently off the charts, more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me.
So literally the top guy in terms of that kind of wealth in his region.
Unmatched.
Yeah.
And it keeps going, amassing silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces.
Whoa. Okay. That's not just personal wealth. That's like national treasury level stuff.
Yes, acquiring the wealth of entire regions, it implies. And he didn't skip the finer things either.
Like what?
Well, men and women singers for entertainment and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. Basically, every sensory pleasure wealth could buy.
Okay, let's just pause and picture this. Peak success. Grand buildings, landscapes, resources, enormous wealth in livestock, gold, treasures, control over people, every kind of entertainment and delight. He even says, I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. He hit the absolute summit.
He really did. And crucially, the text points out this wasn't just luck. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. He was smart, strategic. He earned this success through skill.
And he enjoyed it, right? It says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. He fully experienced it all.
Yes, and he found some satisfaction in the work itself. His heart took delight in all my work, seeing the results as the reward for all my labor. For a time, the effort seemed worth it because the achievement was so vast.
So the pinnacle of worldly success achieved through wisdom and effort, fully experienced. Surely this is where he found the lasting meaning he was looking for.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But this is where the narrative takes that famous sharp turn. After listing all these incredible accomplishments, he steps back. He says, "Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve."
That moment of reflection.
Yeah.
What did he see?
It's the line that echoes through the chapter, and frankly, it's stunning given everything that came before, which everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun.
Meaningless. Chasing the wind. After all that. How could he feel nothing was gained? It seems almost impossible.
That's the power of the under the sun perspective he's exploring. If you only look at life within its earthly boundaries without anything transcendent, all that striving, all that stuff, it ultimately feels hollow, like trying to grab the wind. You feel it, you work hard at it, but you can't hold it. There's no substance gained in the end.
So pleasure, projects, wealth, all came up empty. What about the wisdom he kept mentioning? Did that offer a way out?
Well, he definitely sees wisdom's practical value for navigating life while you're living it. He says, wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness.
Okay, so it helps you see clearly, avoid pitfalls.
Right. The wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in the darkness. So day to day, wisdom is obviously better.
There's a but, isn't there? You mentioned something brings him back to despair.
Yes. This is the next blow. He realizes that despite wisdom being better in life, ultimately, the same fate overtakes them both, the wise man and the fool.
The same fate. What's he referring to?
Death. And what comes after, or rather what doesn't come after from this earthly view, he points out that neither the wise nor the fool will be long remembered.
Oh.
Both will be forgotten, and the bottom line, both must die.
So death is a great leveler, and seeing that makes even wisdom seem futile in the grand scheme.
From that under-the-sun viewpoint, yes. If everyone ends up forgotten in the grave, what was the ultimate advantage of being wise? What then do I gain by being wise, he asks. It leads him right back to that feeling of meaninglessness.
And this realization hits hard. He uses incredibly strong language, so I hated life.
It's raw despair, isn't it?
Yeah.
He hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All that effort, building an empire, gaining riches, viewed through the lens of death and meaninglessness, it felt like a heavy, painful burden.
Not just empty, but actively grievous.
Yes. And again, the refrain. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind.
He seems particularly fixated on hating the work itself, the toil.
That's right. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun. Why? Because I must leave them to the one who comes after me.
The legacy problem. All that effort and you just have to hand it over.
Exactly. Massive frustration there. And uncertainty, too. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool.
Right. He poured wisdom and skill into building it, but his successor might be completely incompetent.
And that successor will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. The thought that a fool might inherit and possibly ruin his life's work, this too is meaningless, he concludes. It's infuriating for him.
It feels almost like an injustice to him.
He frames it that way. For a man may do his work with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then he must leave all he owns to someone who has not worked for it. Someone else reaps the rewards without the struggle. He calls this a great misfortune, fundamentally unfair from this perspective.
So meaninglessness in the face of death, frustration over legacy. Did he also reflect on just the cost of all that striving during his life?
He did. He questions the whole process. What does a man get for all the toil and anxious striving with which he labors under the sun?
And the answer isn't satisfaction.
No. The answer he gives is, all his days, his work is pain and grief. Even at night, his mind does not rest. Constant effort, anxiety, worry. It robbed him of peace, brought suffering, and predictably, this too is meaningless.
Okay, so this has been a pretty bleak journey. Pleasure, achievement, wealth, wisdom, all tested to the absolute limit, all found wanting, all ultimately declared meaningless, a chasing after the wind when viewed purely under the sun. But the chapter doesn't quite end there, does it? There's a shift.
There is, right at the end. It's quite distinct. After all that striving and despair, a different possibility emerges.
What is it?
A much simpler perspective. The text observes, a man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work.
Just enjoy the basics. Food, drink, finding some contentment in your daily tasks. That's a huge contrast to building empires.
It really is. Very grounded, very immediate. But here's the crucial part, where the perspective seems to broaden beyond just under the sun. He attributes the ability to find this simple joy, not just to your own effort or attitude.
But to what?
He says, this too I see is from the hand of God.
So enjoying a meal, finding satisfaction in your job, that's presented as a gift from God, not something you just generate yourself.
That's the perspective offered here, yes. He even asks, rhetorically, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? It reframes basic life satisfaction as divinely enabled, not just achieved.
Interesting. And the chapter closes by doubling down on God's role and how things turn out.
It does. It makes a final point about God distributing outcomes. To the man who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. These good things are presented as gifts.
And for the sinner, the one not pleasing God.
For the sinner, God gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, but with a twist, to hand it over to the one who pleases God.
So even the worldly success of someone focused only on accumulation might just be part of God's larger plan to benefit someone else.
That's the implication. And the final verdict on that whole cycle of striving and potential transfer of wealth.
Let me guess.
This, too, is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. It seems to suggest that gathering wealth without the God-given ability to enjoy it, or just gathering it to eventually lose it according to God's plan, is also ultimately futile.
So pulling this all together, this deep dive has shown us someone who tried everything the world offers at the highest level: pleasure, projects, wealth, wisdom.
Right. And from that purely under-the-sun viewpoint, looking only at this life, the conclusion was stark, meaningless, a chasing after the wind. No lasting satisfaction found there.
Fueled by the reality of death, being forgotten, and losing control of one's life's work to potentially foolish successors. The striving itself brought pain.
But then, that surprising turn at the end. The idea that simple daily satisfaction, eating, drinking, enjoying your work, is possible. But it's presented as a gift, something that comes from the hand of God.
Which really flips the script on whether meaning is something we achieve or something we receive. So for you listening, what does this ancient, brutally honest exploration make you think about? Your own pursuits, your definition of success. Where are you looking for that deep, lasting satisfaction in life under the sun?
And maybe the final thought to leave you with, based only on this chapter, is someone who achieved the absolute peak of worldly success and wisdom found it all ultimately meaningless apart from God enabling simple enjoyment. Does that suggest that maybe the chasing after the wind is baked into any pursuit that doesn't connect with or acknowledge that higher source for contentment? It's a powerful question the text leaves us with. Definitely something to ponder.